It is 7:02. I'm gonna open the Jericho Affordable Housing Committee March 12th meeting. I'll first review the agenda per usual. We'll start with public comment, approve the minutes, and then do some housekeeping, which is committee organization stuff, because it's March. And then I think we'll spend the bulk of the time today talking about the work plan for the upcoming year. And then at 8 o'clock, our new select board member, Peter Booth, has requested to join us to introduce himself, and he's interested in learning about what work the committee's been doing since he left the committee. And then we'll do liaison updates, other business, April agenda, and adjourn. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add or change about the agenda? Yeah.
If you have, and it might be in here somewhere, just a brief recap of how town meeting went, specifically the what you had set up outside the table.
Yeah, sure. Let me put that under other business.
I think that was only last week, wasn't it?
Make sure to hit
Yeah, I was at work. So.
that. Anything else? Dope. All right. Dave Ganter, public in attendance. Do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add?
No comments. Just you passed around something a month ago on a toolkit conference seminar to sign up for. It's on Thursday. I'm going to be going to that.
Is that the trust fund?
What's that? They are not talking about zoning laws or legislation. They're talking about hammers and nails and 2x4s.
Which I forget. There's so many of them. Which one is it?
It's sponsored by the state.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It was going to be held. It was going to be held in the Granite Hall. It's now been moved to the Elks Lodge or the Moose Lodge or some other place.
That's awesome, but you're gonna go?
It goes from 9 to 12. Yeah, I'm going.
Oh, great. Would you report back?
Yeah, I'll report back. As I said, it's about hammers and nails and 2x4s. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
It all fits.
I'll go get the paperwork and put who's sponsoring it and the name of it in the chat.
Oh, great. That would be awesome. Thank you, Dave. Great. Okay, do minutes from February. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second? Second. Thanks, Frederica. Does anybody have any comments, changes, edits? Perfect, per usual. All right, all those in favor of approving the February minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. All right. So committee organization, I'm just gonna share this because sometimes it's helpful to see, to have something like that. All right, so currently, obviously, I am chair. Wayne is vice chair and is also clerk. Does anyone have would anyone like to run for chair or vice chair or clerk? And Wayne, I think I'm looking at you in terms of, are you happy to stay with your positions?
I'd run for chair if you're feeling burning need to step aside and Eric or Frida don't want to.
I do not feel a burning need to step aside, but this will be, I think, my last year as chair. I think I don't want this to just be the SJ show. So I'd love for this year to start slowly transitioning. If anyone's interested, but as long as you all are happy to have me serve as chair, I'm happy to continue. Does anyone-
Maybe I could say that Eric, because of his superior bookkeeping skills and extreme knowledge of parliamentarianism, that maybe would make a great clerk.
I have no idea why you think I have good bookkeeping skills. No, these are just personal notes.
3
that's all.
years, Brenda, and it's called a book.
It is, it's just notes.
Wouldn't you like to be clerk?
I respectfully decline as I really don't have enough time for that.
That's a stepping stone to vice chair.
It is, and if you were to ask me this in another 12 months, I would probably have a different answer.
Oh, okay.
Well, and in exactly 12 months, we will be
Yeah.
having this exact
That's right.
conversation.
Got yourself a succession.
There we go. Yeah, no, I'm happy with it.
Okay, all right, well, let's do a motion. Does anyone want to move to keep me as chair?
So moved.
Thank you. Does
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Although we should perhaps just put, I don't know, maybe like Stacy as one of these roles.
Oh, yeah,
Just a-
let's nominate
Brenda, well,
Stacy.
yeah, she's not here.
Let's nominate someone who's not here.
Yeah.
I'd like to move, can I make motions as chair? Is that just something Catherine doesn't like to do, or is that an actual rule?
What is the motion you'd like to make?
That, to nominate Wayne for chair, vice chair and clerk.
I'll nominate Wayne for vice chair and clerk.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I found my function on this.
There you go.
That's not
You can be first anytime you want.
good. That's not fast enough.
All right, the other thing I wanted to, well, there's two more things under this topic. One of them is liaison roles. I think I'd like to stay, I think it's important for the chair to be liaison with the select board. And I'd like to stay with the JCDC and the DEIC. Unless someone wants to fight me for them, which we can do. Eric, obviously, planning commission.
Yeah.
Wayne, are you happy to stay on conservation?
Sure, yeah.
Frederica, are you?
Yeah, I'd like to make the DRB more of my mission actually than that's fun.
Yeah, okay,
I mean, thus far I've been just trying to understand what they do and I've been following their meetings and stuff. I think that we need to get back to that.
so too, it's with everything, it's kind of a writing process.
Yeah,
To
definitely,
it.
definitely.
And especially with the DRB, it's a lot of.
Yeah,
Okay, so I feel funny moving people when they're not here. I might tentatively move Richard down to trails, which is now,
that's a thing though.
it's now bicycle and pedestrian connectivity committee. And then confirm with Chuck and Stacy that they want to stay where they are. So those are the jobs for me to do. The other thing, anything else liaison related before I move on to procedural stuff? The only thing procedure wise, I mean, you know, we follow open meeting law and some which have to do with when our agendas were posted, when our meetings were posted, how we make motions and things like that. The only question I have for the group in terms of procedure or expectations is, do we want to have any kind of expectations in terms of attendance? Or,
At this meeting,
yeah,
you mean like, we'll take attendance and.
How many times?
how many,
Letter from the.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe it seems, maybe it is unnecessary. You know, we meet once a month, and so if you make it to, 4 meetings in a year, does that seem like?
Yeah, so that brings me to a question, that I didn't want to ask, not to take up time, which is, there are terms associated with this, right? So people come, roll on and roll off, right?
It's a 3-year term for that
It's a
reason.
3-year term.
Yeah, and they're all kind of staggered, so we don't all
Okay,
happen at the same time.
all right.
So I think 3 of you were up this year. I think there's maybe 2 next year. But yes, there are terms.
Okay, because, I was wondering how new people would have the opportunity to join the committee. And whether an expansion makes sense, or just the rolling on and off makes sense. And if there's another mechanism that inactivity would be another reason to roll on.
Yeah.
That makes sense too. So I think it does make sense that if a member finds himself unable to attend, at least on a semi-regular basis, that they may want to, say that's enough reason to give somebody else.
Well, certainly we should, if someone is not showing up regularly, have a conversation with that person, say, do you really want to be part? If so, we'd like to have you show up. If not, we'd like to post a position for somebody else. And it's been done that way in other people on the committee before. It's been done that way in the planning commission, where people just, if you hit your limit, this is as far as I can go.
Yeah.
But the polite thing is to say, I'm at my limit, I'm done.
Right, so do we need a rule about that, or do we just want to handle it like that? What do you think? Is it like more customary to just go to the person and say, hey, we know these regulars?
I think it's more customary to say
Yeah.
that.
Because I've been in committees where this rule thing has applied, but those were run by people who were super rule oriented. So,
Super what?
yeah.
Rule oriented.
Rule oriented, okay.
Okay.
I think it's a fair question to ask. If someone is, if you're not enough interested in, if you're interested in the committee is such that you really aren't, again, it's not top priority.
Yeah.
But if it's 0 priority, it's like, hey, I feel like today I'm gonna go, then, yeah. There may be other people, and as you recall, SJ, we've had, when we were short people, it was a challenge to find people to come on board.
Well, I've got a couple of people in mind that I would love to have conversations with who have shown interest in this space and in the town. Who I'd like to have it just because they're interested to stop by the table or have mentioned it at select board meetings and stuff. And it is true to not be able to say, we're gonna have an opening in a year, come to a few meetings, and if you like it, run for the position or something like that. I think you get the email from Paula that says, do you want to re-up? Your term is up, do you want to re-up? And so there isn't really a mechanism to allow turnover like that, which I think is a good thing to think about. But that's kind of a separate issue than this one too. So what I'm hearing from the group is that we don't feel like we need to have anything kind of formal. But we all agree that it is absolutely appropriate. I mean, I don't think there was any doubt about it, but it's absolutely appropriate to, if you feel like a member is.
So we're discussing it now, so would we have to make any kind of motion stuff to say that if, as a group, we think that someone could be talked to, that you being.
No, I don't think it needs to be like that. I think if we were gonna decide that we were gonna have a rule, like a 6-meeting rule or whatever, that we would want a motion for, but no, okay.
So we can affirm our support that if you think there's an issue that.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I will say out loud too, that I feel like those conversations, I would prefer to have that conversation privately than bring it to the group. Okay.
That's not something you wanna put a flag on when, have everybody know what's going on.
Right.
What?
These are our neighbors. We don't wanna
Okay.
publicly shame them
Yeah.
for.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely.
And we have a really good committee right now, when we have some really engaged people on us, and it's nice to have that.
Okay, anything else kind of committee organization wise? This is. We kind of do this every March, revisit this, and then we'll revisit our work plan in just a second too. But anything else before we move on from that?
I wonder, it's probably premature, but it would be nice to know that when the wastewater treatment results finally come out some point in 2026 at the rate they're going. It would be nice if the
So
housing
there's,
committee had some kind of connection to whatever gets done next on that. I know you've got that down there in the
yeah, let's,
wastewater reserve fund, but
that's an interesting. Perhaps we need a liaison for that specifically, you think?
But
Or is
doesn't
that
the
kind
water
of-
sewer, don't they report to someone that we probably already have a liaison? And
Yes.
Selectboard.
ish. Yeah,
select board.
and I know the
and
planning commission is kind of heavily involved, so there's supposed to be a meeting tomorrow night
yes.
for Riverside.
Mhm.
FYI. Okay,
That's
that's an interesting thought. Let's keep that,
Yeah, it's in our back pocket,
yeah,
depending on what the results are.
you know, and I think that even if. Well, let's switch. Anything else?
Are there any other commissions or boards that we have? Or committees?
Just open up. Boards and committees. Select board, planning commission, DRB, trails, affordable housing, conservation, mobs. Jericho Energy Task Force, DPI, Tri-Town Alternative doesn't exist anymore. Board of Abatement, Cemetery, Board of Civil Authority, Recreation, and JCDC.
So most of those, we don't really have any dog in those hunts.
No.
You could volunteer as, I'm on the cemetery commission, we're always looking for hardy people that want to clear brush and dig graves and stuff. I've actually got one there too.
Maybe when
Do you get
when the
an
chair is up.
excavator when you do that?
No cremation, but I'll tell you, we hit this rock that was that big. When we were going down, and I'll tell you, I never worked so hard in my life.
Oh my
to make it
God.
out of there.
What did you do with the rock?
We were able to dig around it and push it down enough so that it was below the
Oh, okay.
level that it should be, but.
So who got that in their
If
front
we needed
yard?
a hole that big. I ended up with a hole like that.
And you're only digging the
The front.
cremation.
Yeah.
You're not digging the full.
Okay.
Do we have coffins, any of them? Do full coffin burials? and
Oh,
stuff?
yeah. Oh, by the way, it's just a word from our sponsor, so any of you are thinking of buying a plot, there's plenty available, so.
How much are they? Totally off topic, but
I wanna
Yeah,
say
you know.
something like 2,000, that might be a little.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna move us on to the work plan. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
All right. What time is it? 7:21. All right, I'm gonna pull up, I also want to pull up our previous work plan, from this year. So that we can take a look at that too, but, what I first wanted to do was just kind of, get the big brainstorm ideas here. Sorry, you guys are getting a clue into how I set up our agendas. So we've got the housing report, that we've agreed to do yearly. I think we've all agreed that, pushing for the waste and water reserve fund is important, and that can be maybe beyond just pushing for the fund, but maybe wastewater and infrastructure development.
sorry, calling in from the peanut gallery again.
Mhm.
Was that raised at all? I know we had conversations with one of our members about the importance of doing that, who
I thought we submitted something to the.
I read
Select board.
the letter to the select
Yeah,
board,
that's right.
which was received
Without comment.
in the room without comment. And I think it felt
Did we make enemies?
we almost did. I think that we have not, but I did a lot of, I did a lot of conversation, a lot of conversation about it afterwards. Which on the one hand, I think is good because it did do what I think the goal in the room was, which was to push, to push and to push publicly. I think we all left that meeting knowing that an amendment wasn't gonna happen. And so if anyone left this room thinking that that was gonna be the outcome, I didn't do a good job of communicating that likely wasn't going to be.
I mean, we had several options to bring this forward, and we chose an option that was not the most in your face option, which would have been at town meeting.
Which would have been at town meeting, of course, yeah.
So we followed a procedure that I
Yeah.
think is totally within the purview. of
It's
the committee
absolutely within the
to bring
purview.
something up to the select board, and actually next January, that's what everybody's coming.
Yep.
So,
But I think part of our discussion was if we brought it up at the town meeting, it might be too much of a surprise.
yeah, so we didn't,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think though that, you know, we got attention. And I think that folks on, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the planning commission but it sounded from the following planning commission meeting that there was some support there and that, I don't know about the planning commission as a whole, but certainly some members on the planning commission wanted to talk more about this and learn more about what we were thinking and that this is an avenue worth pursuing. And yes, no amendment was made either from the floor or from the stage. So there's I think a bunch of, there is some work there that I think a subcommittee of us can really push forward. And some of that is the reserve fund, but I think there's just going to be lots of ways of making sure that housing and affordable housing is constantly part of the conversation and that we are an active force kind of pushing a project forward, whatever that may be. There's a couple of big, there's a couple of, as I see it, and again, we can talk about it more in depth, but there's a couple of kind of zoning
Bylaw
packages,
modification.
yeah, that I think are worth talking about. I think that, you know, there's the form-based code in particular.
Mhm.
There's changes, the bylaw modernization, the grant that the planning commission received to do work is focused on just the village centers. I don't even know if the village is included.
The village centers are here, Jericho Corners and Riverside.
Is the village district also included or is it just village centers?
Just the designated VCTR districts.
Okay. And so, you know, there's more than,
And what is this grant about? It's about changing or adjusting, modernizing the zoning that currently applies to those centers.
exactly,
Not changing the zones, expanding.
It does not apply to
Could do those as well, but it's mostly, you look at the zoning regs for what's allowed in village centers versus other parts of the town. Some of it, particularly things about lot sizes, setbacks, road frontage, makes it harder to put high density development in
Right.
those areas. And since the mandate from the state is that all high density development has to happen in village centers, makes sense to try and upgrade those so we can actually have it relevant and be able to do
Right.
it here in town.
And so we actually have like
But
a grant.
the grant,
consultant
the
for it?
funding, yes, David is back and working on it, and the grant specifically focuses the payment for his hours and this energy on village centers and thus the form-based code.
And what, well, the form-based code is only 1 out of 3 village.
Correct.
Is
So
he
that's
just-
why I've got them as two separate things.
So is he focusing just on the form-based code or also on the village centers?
The form-based code is in the village center.
I know, I realize
So-
that, but what I heard previously is that he was laser focused for the year plus only on the form-based code. But that might not be. That might be a misunderstanding.
Not the, yes, that is true, and I got the impression that the planning commission was also going to be looking at village center.
The way he develops those codes have to be congruent with what the rest of the village centers look like. So they bleed into each other anyway.
And
You know, if he says, okay, in this area, form-based code says you can build a 16-story building, and the neighboring center says you can't have more than 2 stories. It creates an incongruity of what you can do.
There's some overlap, yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree that it is ambiguous to me how specifically, how much attention will be paid to village center zoning that is not the form-based code. I think that, I believe that
Because you
they'll
could
be
start
looking
with
at
either.
both.
Yeah,
But the attention and the biggest attention right now is on the form-based code, but I think that they can both. I think that they both will probably happen, but again, this is a place where we can push for village center changes. Now, what is not part of the bylaw modernization grant and is currently, as far as I can tell from meeting minutes and watching, is not currently being discussed, is also making changes to other parts of the regs. And
So the rural
whether,
residential, the forestry, the agricultural, the low density areas are not covered in this at all.
right,
Because the grant was for village centers.
and so, you know, the obvious question is, okay, well, you've got David working on the grant and the planning commission is made up of however many members. Why can't we also look at, or why can't they also look at other bits?
that are
At the same
congruent
time.
with the town plan.
Correct. And
I
so,
believe that is part of planning commission's goals for the rest of this year is to look at the other parts of our zoning and see where we can make adjustments to allow for higher
Okay.
density
I
in some
hope-
places.
okay, I hope that's true. Okay, that would be great. It sounded to me like there was this super intense focus, but I may have misunderstood because they were talking about David's time specifically.
David's time, super focused on village centers. The rest of it is not covered in the grant, so we would have to do that without grant money support.
Right. But you think that the planning commission is
There's an appetite for that.
willing to do that? Okay, great. That's good. We will, I imagine, we would all agree that we'd be willing to donate some of our votes to the cause to, if we needed manpower. And then the other two things are HOA, which again is kind of a smaller thing, but I think it's still worth keeping on our radar and yeah, figuring out the DRB piece.
Figuring out specifically how best to play our role, because I think they're actually looking for us to.
I think they are too.
Like the most recent meeting that I looked at, there was a question for public comment at a point that I think we could have provided public comment, unfortunately, other the minutes rather than. So,
And I have gotten such mixed kind of,
The comments that I remember hearing from the DRB when they came in front of the planning commission in the past was that they can't change the regulations. They can only interpret them. And their plea was that the regulations be less ambiguous. Broad request. On affordable housing, if we wanted to have something to do with that, it would be to find out which of the regulations you think are ambiguous around, specifically as they relate to affordable housing, or adding in additional densities or whatever, all of the other things that we want to see. And then we could lobby the planning commission to make a change in that part of the regulations, which would make it easier for the DRB to say, yes, this is now allowed in this zone. They wouldn't have to try and interpret, does it mean you can have 200 square feet extra? Does it mean you can have more? And how does that fit in? Which is what I think they don't want to do that from what I heard last time from them. So if we can add
And
clarity,
there's-
we can make their job easier.
and that is really, again, us, kind of back up to the zoning board, us kind of lobbying and advising or advocating the planning commission to make certain changes. But I do think that there is a piece for
Yeah.
advocacy in a DRB meeting to say, we don't have any teeth behind it because we can't whatever, we can, it's not a written regulation. But I think that it would go a long way for the Affordable Housing Committee. It would look bad for the Affordable Housing Committee to provide a letter or a statement that says, hey, I noticed this in your bylaws. Those are exclusionary. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. These are some ways that you could increase, density or provide opportunity for future infill, like that kind of thing. Like, again, we don't have any teeth behind it because we don't write the regulations, but I do think that there is a place for us to voice that.
I think you're mixing two pieces. The one is whether the DRB can say, we want to do this thing, but the regulations don't allow us.
Which we don't have any.
Well, we do, because we can work with the planning commission and say, here are things we think should be changed. And the other one is the
Yes.
HOAs, which explicitly prohibit those. And DRB has no control, planning has no control over that. That's something that
But it is an opportunity.
we could encourage DRB to say, hey, if you do this, regulations allow you to do these other things. So maybe you should change your HOA.
I don't think we encourage the DRB to say that, but I think that at a DRB hearing, we say it's an opportunity for us to speak directly to the developer in front of.
yes, and wasn't that kind of an ask or at least an idea that came up that the zoning administrator specifically asked us to be more proactive with developers and help them as they are preparing an application? Remember that? I mean, that's the whole plan about going to
That doesn't sound.
developers and giving them a list. I thought it was the zoning administrator.
There's there is an industry, yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
Lynn
Just
that did it.
doesn't-
I thought it came from him. I don't know.
Maybe it did. But when I go
But
to,
I thought that, we tried, we thought about that. We actually thought about a list. And then I think that where we ended up was that there was really no good mechanism for inserting that anywhere in the process. Right?
I think we came up against a little resistance and we were not sure how the process worked to be able to combat that resistance, is my read on the situation. But having now watched some DRB hearings and meetings, I think that there is absolutely a place where we can do that. And attending some of these broader housing conferences and housing committee, this, that, and the other thing, and asking what are some things that housing committees can do. One of the top things that people say is go to DRB hearings and speak in favor of housing. And, you know, advocate for housing. Be a voice in opposition to the voices who are, you know, working against it. And I realize that that's slightly different if we're talking about, you know, someone trying to build a quad and it's a conditional use. So you've got neighbors saying they don't want to live next to a quad, but I do think that there is a place for the committee to go in and just bring these things to light. But without the regulation piece, the developer doesn't have to, and the DRB is in no position, the DRB can't ask them to do it either. But there,
So-
I see these meetings and they're trying to get public, you know,
They're
goodwill
asking
and
for,
asking for,
yes,
yeah.
and they do get public comment from the interested residents, the ones that are defined as being close enough to the properties to be interested. And the only thing that does is basically the same thing we could do, which is basically provide input to help with some kind of, you know, yes or no decision that the DRB does. And if that had no influence at all, then they wouldn't have those interested parties to be agreed. So I mean, public comment, I think, does have some influence on there. If it was so black and white, then why even have the interested parties say something? The neighbors that are gonna say, oh, what about the traffic and stuff? Why even have them speak if there was no chance that would influence any DRB decision? I think it is so that the DRB can go back and can say, okay, has the traffic study been done? And we can have we can raise similar points, I think. All right.
I think the point you raise is valid. In that, if the neighbors are saying, right now we live on a road that has 10 cars per hour coming by, and if this development goes in, it's gonna be 50, and that's gonna change the character, and blah, 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 or their wastewater community septic is going to drain into this particular sensitive natural area and it should be stopped. But if those conditions are met, so they're not polluting, they're not gonna change the traffic flow, they're not gonna cut down valuable trees that somebody says are right there or destroy habitat. I believe the DRB is limited to, is your setback right? Do you have the right density? Do you have the housing size and all of those things in place? And neighbors can complain all they want. But if you've met all the rules, DRB can't say no. So what I think I would be happier to see would be some kind of a way to, again, DRB can only enforce regulations, some kind of way to create an incentive to have the ability in a building that comes up, put in an accessory unit. You may not want one. The next owner may. The next owner may not, we don't know. But if you are prohibited from even doing one, that to me is the area where we can have the biggest impact. But I'll just add, I don't think there are enough people in the town of Jericho who are willing to subdivide up their dwelling as an accessory unit to make a substantial difference in our population. But I think everybody should have the opportunity to do that if they want to. Which gets me back to HOAs, because if you've got community septic, if you've got community road, which the town's not taking on any new roads right now, so every new development's gonna have an HOA to do road maintenance. That's an opportunity to use that particular document to leverage. And I think the DRB is probably the only one who can say, yes, you can build, you've got all the things. Boy, sure would be nice if you would just get rid of that restriction. Hate to beat the dead horse, but HOAs are If you live in one, they can control a lot.
What are,
I was just going to say, so, you know, I'm listening to the concept of density and is there any requirement that any units have to be apartments? I mean, could they be condos? Because, when I lived in California, I saw this, that so many little neighborhoods had people come in and buying up the little houses, and they went from like $200,000 for a little house in like the early 90s to $1.3 million because they were not considered, you know, family developments anymore. They were commercial. And, you know, this neighborhood used to be filled with kids. There were 2 little kids out of 12 houses, the rest were all renters. So I was just thinking that, if you say, okay, if you put a multi-unit, we're not requiring these, that it's apartments, right? My concern is apartments drive up housing costs and we'll have.
that's a
California
different
companies.
conversation, but no, we're not.
Okay.
We're not requiring anything.
Okay,
If you want to take your single family home, turn it into a duplex. Okay,
but a duplex condos versus, because somebody's buying them. See, what I saw
What
was.
you're meaning sold versus rented, is that the distinction?
Yeah, yeah, so if you split your house, let's say that you want to make a duplex, but it's 2 condos, because once it's rented, rental prices always go up, which drive the valuation of the house up. And then the neighboring houses too, and so, you know, there's 12 houses on this short little street, Second Street, in Campbell. And, you know, they were all 1 point some odd million dollars, and there was only one family with children in. Because both parents were able to give money, and apparently the couple had done somewhat well with stock options, prior to it. But he told me his was a little bit bigger house, he had to pay like 1.3 million. No, I mean, he had to pay 1.5 million, but ours was, that we were living in, someone said it would cost 1.3 million, you know, but it's a little 800 square foot house with the yard was measured in square feet, not acres. But, yeah, so, you know, I just saw that situation where prices are driven up because, you know, homes become commercial properties in a sense, and so that's why I was just interested that. if it-
Investment properties too, is what you're
Investment
saying.
properties,
Return into
yeah.
investment.
Yeah, the internal,
Yeah,
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 the value.
yeah,
shoots up.
We're chill, you can come have a seat up here.
Hey.
Well, okay, so there's no requirement in this thing.
I mean, we're not talking about,
Agnostic.
we're not talking about at that level right now anyway,
Okay.
but, you know.
I know. Jericho supporting that level of density would be interesting to say the least. We don't have the water, we don't have the sewer, we don't have the roads.
Yeah.
Be great for the schools, get a lot of kids up here, but
Is
anybody up there?
Dave Ganter is up there. Are you on a time crunch, Peter? Can we keep talking for 15 more minutes?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so are there any other things that you'd like to see? I mean, those were the biggies. But any other things that you'd like to see on our work plan for 24-25?
So one thing that you've done last year, is just the presence at the farmer's market and the presence at, you know, things like that, and we may want to make that part of the plan.
Yeah.
So that we can figure it out.
So I'm gonna bring up our old work plan from this past year. Just to John. So this, let's see, so advise regulatory bodies, and I think that if I remember, this was a little while ago, but I think that we kind of took these headers from our mission or from our charter. So that's done. Zoning update recommendations, we're still, we
did that.
did that, and
We're
I
gonna
think
do-
we're gonna do some more.
I think that's ongoing. That's
Yeah,
ongoing.
looks like we're gonna do that again.
And yeah, and we just kind of talked about that too, and I think there's kind of 3 tiers to that. In terms of select board and JCDC stuff, this is really just kind of engaging.
Housing goals resolution, you did,
Yep.
did that.
I guess for this one, this is probably where reserve fund might come in. Or,
Are we just gonna revise them?
well, I'm just using this as
Okay.
I will build a new one off of this, but I'm kind of using it as a brainstorming tool and as a reflection tool. And also now that Peter's here, it would be nice for Peter to have an idea of what we've been up to the last
And
year.
what is prioritized spectrum?
Spectrum of actions, so this was a document that we as a committee kind of put together, and then Susan and I kind of refined and we started out refining, and then instead we just kind of added to, but it was like every possible thing the town could do for housing. And then we as a committee sat down and looked at that huge list and kind of prioritized what are the things that make sense for Jericho. So we've done this. And I'm actually, I pulled that up a couple nights ago and want to dip back into that for our
So perhaps we should update that.
zoning. I think that what we should do is take this and now plug some of those things into the 3 different zoning projects we talked about.
It wouldn't hurt also just to review and update what are the actions we're going to take. If some things are done, that's great, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean there aren't new things we can do.
Yeah, and for the housing goals resolution, we're gonna have to put that in, we're gonna have to make a report.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought we were supposed to be working on this.
yeah,
Okay, well.
yes, we are.
That's why it's in caps.
So I don't forget, is that?
That's a good idea, actually. So that when I go back to this and I can't remember this fever dream of a meeting, I can distinguish what was new and what was. The DRB, I think we're still wrestling with this guy.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna add HOA here, but I think that that's gonna be its own beast, but I'm just gonna put it there for now. And
What's SD?
Select board.
subdivision,
Oh.
subdivision PUD. And I still think that this is important, for Jericho in particular, for the housing committee and fostering goodwill and being responsible stewards. We really need to be working on these relationships and taking these things into account as we think about infill and density and housing. And this gets to what you just brought up, Frederica, which is kind of community education, outreach and advocacy. So what you just brought up was the farmer's market, I think.
I think you have it down there, tabling at farmer's market, I see it down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, in our
Yeah.
table, yeah. This one, I think that we still, I think having forums when, inviting Harvest Crossing, inviting the guy from
Yeah.
VHFA, I think that this is actually a nice tool.
Yeah,
And we should be thinking about who we may want to be inviting this year and the kinds of dialogues we may want to be having.
so we
Oh,
have
thank you,
joint,
Dave.
we have joint meetings, right? So those were joint meetings with planning commission.
Yeah, it would be
We
great.
had one with planning commission and
We
DRB.
had at least, oh, one.
No, it was JCDC.
Didn't we have one with the
We had a
DRB?
JCDC relatively,
No, we had one joint meeting and we were supposed to have them regularly and then.
I think we had two, didn't we have two planning commission meetings?
Did we?
I thought we had two joint meetings.
Good for us.
I think yes and no, because I think there was something that planning commission
Oh,
had
no,
to
it was
do.
part
It
of the
was,
town plan.
it was for the town plan. We had to be,
Yeah.
it had to be done on housing
Yeah.
days.
It was a nice way of us saying, here, we'll give you our meeting time, but it means that we all get to be a part of your meeting and get to tell you what we want in the housing section of the town plan.
Worked out well.
It did,
It
it
worked out really
did,
well.
but I think it's a good point. I think that,
Joint meeting.
I think that I'm gonna put that up here. Advertise and facilitate use of programs beyond, beyond posting information on the website and on Front Porch Forum, which I probably only did maybe 3 different times. I can't say that we've done much of this year.
So, yeah, I mean, if we all had a lot of time, one thing to do would be to update the website and pull in some of the resources that you mostly and some of us also have learned about by attending all these other things. These housing conference, and, you know. I have still some of what I wrote down for that one, but there may have been, if we do that proactively or prospectively, when we attend other things, then we look for links that might be useful for our website and then update the website. I think you've done that in the past, that's how everything's on there, that's on there,
Yeah,
but updating it, keeping it there.
I found this on the web.
Excuse me.
yes.
Don't ask Siri for things.
And then I still think,
Can I add a piece in there on the
Yeah,
advertising? It was just a sort of a fever dream. But wouldn't it be fun? Fun,
Oh, I can't wait to.
wrong word probably. If we in the Affordable Housing Committee could facilitate or have an event for the community about ADUs. What's it take to get one? What's the benefits of one? How do you do it? Sort of not just an educational, here's how we can make it easier for you, what we are as a resource, but also to get a sense of the pulse of the community for how many people are in a place where they'd like to move forward with it.
Yeah.
Think of it as a training session.
It's, I
Yeah.
want to do an ADU
Oh,
hop.
that's a cool idea.
I want to do an ADU hop and I want to do, so we've talked about this for 3 different years and just can't make it happen. And if you want to headline this project and take it on, I would love you for it forever. Heinsberg does this every year. And they do it in the fall. The first year we were gonna do this, we're off the hook because COVID happened, so we couldn't do it. So we're off the hook on that one, but the last 2 years we tried to do it, it hasn't come together. But Heinsberg does it every year. and
Brainstorm.
They were
We
happy
do it with the
to-
open house weekend.
Mhm,
Come see some art, come see some ADUs.
mhm.
Oh, with
They'd
the
be-
art.
They'd be happy to, during the art hop. Art and ADU hop.
Yeah.
They were happy to do a joint event with us if we were interested. They were also happy to give us the contact information for all of the people that they invite to come and speak at their event, like Home Share, and I can't remember, I think they had a developer, builder or something or whatever. And yeah, I do think an ADU hop would be amazing and fun, and we have, again, because when we were originally gonna do this, we had just finished. This is while you were on the committee, we had just finished the ADU survey, and so we had a list of people who were willing to be, neighbor resources, and a couple of them were willing to show off their ADUs. But yes, Eric, I'd love to just dump that into that.
I don't know if you need.
I might.
Yeah,
What does Heinsberg get for a turnout, you know?
I feel like they've done it 2 years now. They've got a cool little 4-minute video.
Where would it be held?
I feel like they said that
We
the
drive
first
around.
one
Oh.
was
I'm sure.
20 some odd people, and then another one, I think it was maybe 15. It was a smaller.
That's still good.
But yeah. And I will say, I mean, we'll get to this later, but at town meeting, I can't remember how many I had Chuck print up. But again, at town meeting, every single ADU brochure was gone from the table by the end of the night. So there is an interest still. I do think, again, I'm still stuck on this YIMBY campaign and this, what can I as a neighbor do about affordable housing? I don't know what this looks like, but, yeah. And I don't think we're gonna need this for this year because we've got, the committee housing drop-ins.
So, I did watch a Richmond, select board meeting, or zoning board meeting, but anyways, there was people that were complaining about the Act 42 that says you can't require more than 1.5 parking spaces. And so the point that the person was making is that if you build 20 units, and there's only 1.5 parking spaces per unit, you're going to run out of parking spaces. And then he mentioned the limited parking in downtown Richmond. So I don't know if you guys heard anything about that from input to you guys about parking space. Well, we don't have, that's right, we don't have community or town water or septic, right?
Yeah,
I
that
think that's
regulation,
specific. Okay.
we don't think affects us.
See, Richmond
Also
does.
the-
Well,
Actually,
actually, it
47
does.
regulations
Form-based
don't apply.
code for the Riverside area does have. Pretty sure it has stipulations on how many parking spaces you have to have per unit.
Pretty sure it is.
It does, so
And I think even in this area. There are requirements for parking spaces.
So, and would it be two, because I mean, other.
Generally 2 per unit.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
I
that.
think it's 1.5. I think it is. Because I think that it was the only place that the form-based code was like in line with. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, because that would be a problem unless we go back to 1920s and only one person is in each unit, you know.
Or each house only has 1 car.
Huh? Yeah, or each house.
I don't know, Wayne, this is a fight that you and I can have.
Oh.
Have later. Okay, but, data collection, we've got the, housing report.
Oh, here, listen. See, it's an Act 47 thing. Richmond had to revise a lot of stuff because of Act 47, because
Yeah.
it generally applies to sewer. But the quote from Act 47 says, Act 47 prohibits deed restrictions and covenants that require minimum dwelling unit size
What now?
and more than 1 parking space in areas with sewer and water, or 1.5 spaces in areas without sewer and water for multi-unit dwellings if existing other parking isn't sufficient.
Can you read that deed restriction line one more time?
Prohibits deed restrictions and covenants,
Uh-huh.
which are HUAs,
Yeah.
that require minimum dwelling unit size.
What now?
Yeah.
So that's is
That's
that,
Act 47.
is that only for sewer and water though?
You have to have sewer and water in the.
And more than 1 parking space in areas with sewer and
Yes,
water,
that-
or 1.5 spaces in areas without sewer.
But that
Figure out
suggests that
where-
there is a legal mechanism to restrict deeds and
It's
covenants.
one of our things that we,
But-
like, there was like an HOA that said, we want, nobody can build in our HOA a dwelling that has less than 2,000 square feet.
That's the HOA just above Mills River. The new one that just went up.
Oh, yeah,
And we're like,
Minimum
is that-
size is 3,000 square feet.
3,000? Holy shit.
Mm.
We don't use profanity here.
That's crazy.
It's publicly recorded.
But that's what the point the guy was making is that we're running out of space because there won't be enough parking for the units they're building. And there's not enough parking in the town of Richmond. And, you know, where they do have the transient parking to go into the restaurants and stuff like that. So that was his point. So I guess my question is, the town said you can't require more than 1.5, but you could say you should have 2 per unit. And is the difference between we recommend or we require?
Isn't it saying that you can't have less than right?
No, it's here, I pulled up the actual law and it says. In residential districts served by sewer and water, the municipality cannot require more than one parking space per dwelling unit. However, it may require 1.5 spaces for multi-unit dwellings in areas without sewer and water if existing other parking is insufficient. But if there is sewer and water, then you can only require one, regardless of other.
Okay, so that's what the guy was complaining. about.
That's
We don't have
That's what
enough,
he's complaining
we
about.
don't have enough extra parking. And if you're going to do this, you should put the parking at the multi-unit.
So let me get us back onto work plan.
Okay.
So farmer's market, tabling, informational forums. We're gonna have an awesome flashy ADU event that Eric is gonna dream up because he's an event planner.
No, I'm not.
You're a bookkeeper and an event planner. After tonight's meeting.
I can leap off a tall building, too, I just don't plan.
And then the other thing we had for this past year was data collection. We were, part of the housing resolution, housing goals metric, which we, developed, and now we'll nicely just transition into the housing report. We were collecting, and I don't know, Stacy was doing it. I don't know if she's still doing it. She was collecting front porch forum posts and local stories about housing.
Those seem to have dropped off a lot. Remember last summer, there was all kinds of,
There
hey,
was
I
a
need a
new-
house, and I haven't seen those in the last couple of months.
Honestly, I took a break before book forum for a couple months. So I haven't looked.
Jericho residents in the Facebook group Jericho residents had a thing today.
Looking for
I'm
housing.
looking, I'm from Jericho. I've been in Burlington for 2 years, trying to come back to Jericho, looking for leads.
And there's a couple of things about that that's nice, right? One is it gets a little bit at need, because how do you measure something that isn't here? It also helps to put a face on the folks that some people may be afraid of who's gonna move here. It puts a face on folks who are looking for rentals, who are looking to move to Jericho, so that it I don't know, makes it more palatable for some people, I suppose. And then another thing that we had done at the beginning of this past year, which I think was sometimes helpful, was if there was somebody who had an ADU or who had a rental who was advertising, I have an opening. I had reached out to a couple of those people and said, hey, did you fill it? How quickly, how many
people
applications did you
contacted
get? Yeah. So monitoring that can be helpful. And then this was one that we had on here and we haven't formally done anything with. What infill is possible and what infill is likely. And how to measure that and how to quantify that is still a little vague to me, but.
I did first pass at that, I think when Peter was still on the board. And it was making a map, looking at the map of the soils. And the interesting thing is, so much of the most desirable soils are right near the village center.
That's
But-
very convenient.
Unfortunately, Chuck wasn't on the board then, but I was looking at his house, and the house right next door has this big spot in the middle that's code 4, which is, you'd have to put a mound there. But anyways, yeah, so something like that about what infill is possible. And this is what the guy who came last month said too, that he knows of places. So, I mean, we could start with that.
Yeah, we had
map.
Justin Willis here last month, Peter,
Oh.
and we were just like, tell us everything.
Yeah.
He was fantastic.
He's great.
That's a meeting worth watching.
So that, we could start with that map and zoom in on the different areas and show you, here's the soils that are considered to be desirable and workable for, in-ground septic purification, because that's basically what we're going to have for probably quite some time, I think.
I hope not.
What was the other thing?
We need to get that wastewater treatment plant up and running.
Yeah,
Yeah, true, yeah.
but that would be 2 years before it's done, and how long could you until you actually built the wastewater treatment?
All right, so it's 8:07. I'm gonna take us off,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take us off work plan. I think I've got enough to put together a draft work plan for us to take a look at next month. And we can tweak, but I think I've got, is there anything that we didn't just mention in that conversation that, seems like a glaring?
No, some zoning is in there.
No, I don't think we need to worry about something.
No, because it all comes back.
Did you want me to, show that thing for next month? The soil review, the soils maps and,
Let me take a look at what our.
Our own
agenda
little
looks like
wastewater
for
study
April.
here.
excuse me?
Yeah.
We'll do our own little wastewater study here.
I wanna see.
Hey, I've been in the leach field before.
I'm hoping that
Yeah,
by,
I trust you.
I'm hoping that some part of
It's always-
April is gonna be taken up by us
exercise.
looking at the
And,
wastewater feasibility study report.
I think it'd be interesting if you do that, Wayne, is just to look at how many of those good sites overlap with an existing house or an existing system.
Oh, yeah, they do, this whole, development at the end of Packard, that's beautiful soil, all where all those houses
I
are.
mean, Pinehurst or?
I don't know the
Starboard?
names anymore, but, if you turn into Packard,
Which end of Packard?
this end of Packard, there's all the houses on the left and that whole development on the right that winds around in there.
Yeah, Packard and Starboard and
Starboard, is that it?
then Pinehurst are there.
Yeah,
Pinehurst is old, that's on the seventies that were built in
Yeah.
there.
that was nice soil.
And the other side is Walnut, right?
Yeah, that's.
Black
good
Walnut
soil,
is,
too.
yeah, a little bit further up.
Yeah,
All right, I'm gonna move us on to the next agenda item, which is,
so is Richard joined us?
oh, Richard's here. Hey, Richard, can you hear us okay?
Yep, I got you.
Awesome. Thank you for noticing. All right, 8:09, Peter Booth,
You know, 1 second, sorry.
always on his phone, he's
Yeah,
probably playing
I-
Candy
He's
Crush.
School budget is, my school budget is going down, it's feel like it's.
Oh, no,
losing 40.
it didn't pass, right?
No, but the board's about to cut $5 million in the budget, which is like 40. Now they got our school.
Is that
Yeah.
the,
Is it South Mountain?
See,
Oh, see,
had they inflated it
No,
because of the extra? Oh,
I mean, yes, let's be honest, yeah, everyone ran it to 9.9.
well, that's what I'm saying,
Yes,
so
but
what did
they. They're not like, oh, we're not gonna build that building,
It's
it's gonna be people.
Hmm.
so good. Look at how it pops up there, almost swear.
Well,
No, it's good and I'm terrible at it and you're right, absolutely right. Peter Booth,
Hello.
hi, welcome back
Thank
to the Affordable Housing Committee.
I think everyone here knows me, maybe not Richard. But Dave was dropping in when I was in the Affordable Housing Committee a couple of years ago, and
Mhm.
Eric and Wayne were both on it. Church and, Richard, if you can hear me, my name is Peter Booth, and I was recently elected to the select board. And, it's whirlwind isn't even the word, but it's a fire hose, which is absolutely exactly what it's been. But I'm trying in the first few weeks to go around to committees and just get a sense of what's happening. And so actually being here for that was super helpful. One of the things that I but advocated for, or said I was gonna advocate for, when I was running for select board was, affordable housing. And so I'm really interested in what you guys, Richard, I wasn't on board with you, actually. I think you came on as I was leaving, I believe. Do you work at the
Okay.
guard? Do you work at the
Yes.
guard? Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm interested in sort of what you guys are working on, and I'm interested in what your thoughts are on the JCDC and it's you see it as useful as a tool for affordable housing. And if you could wave a magic wand, what you would have the select board do. And then I have a couple other questions, but those are my main things.
I'm gonna let you
Open forum.
speak.
I'm busy writing, but no one else has a
That's
question.
an excuse.
So the JCDC, these are the guys that are looking at the property over here.
Railroad.
Railroad, yeah.
Yep.
And so I don't leave my community, my little area very often, so I've forgotten the names of roads around. So anyways, so they bought the property. I heard from somebody that there was originally some concerns with stormwater, but somebody thought that was solvable. And I guess the next point, because is where is it now? Is there any plan for the development? Has there been any builders selected? I mean, or is it just the point where they've got the land and they're still trying to determine what exactly to do with it?
So, I mean, well,
Good.
at this point, they have the land and are trying to determine what to do with it. I think the most likely, I think at this point, first, they wanted to do some soil testing to address exactly what you mentioned, both the stormwater and just to see the number of unit, like what capacity the land could hold. I think that there was also some question, and maybe is question, I don't know, about a neighboring property that happens to have really good soil. I don't know any more particulars than that because it hasn't been spoken about in public meetings, so I don't know. And they had reached out to, they've reached out to Champlain Housing Trust and to Green Mountain Habitat. And Green Mountain Habitat doesn't rehab homes, existing homes. And so Green Mountain would be a great partner for putting additional structures on the lot and would be a great partner in terms of helping with project management. But and again, this is just me listening to public meetings, I don't know. There seems to be a desire to maintain the house that's there and potentially rehab it into maybe a duplex. And that is not something that Green Mountain can or will do with them. And so I think they're still kind of at an information gathering phase.
Is there a limitation on their bandwidth in any way, or is it just that trying to, definitely you said the two people that you normally turn to are.
I mean, I think that's a good way to kind of segue the discussion to address Peter's question, which is what is our feeling about the role that the JCDC plays for the town? Do we even know what that role is? And if we do, is it useful? Do we see it being an effective way of addressing housing in Jericho?
If I'm not mistaken, the JCDC is supposed to have bonding capabilities, which would be used for development. And in terms of what could be done there, use the bonding capabilities, use it specifically to build multi-unit housing in that area, if necessary, put in additional septic, whatever's done. As long as it's a bond that would be paid for by the revenue from rent or sale of the houses that are in there, that would be a good thing for the town. It's part of our objectives. It's what we want to see. It's what the town has told us they want. It's in a place that is suitable for high density. You've got walking to
You're talking about railroad.
just railroad. Yeah,
Is it Railroad Ave? Is it Railroad?
Railroad Street, I'm pretty sure.
Circle?
Circle. I think it's
Yeah, Circle. Yeah. Used to be a railroad station there.
Yeah.
Many years
I don't
ago.
think there's actually a circle.
Actually, there was this huge circle that was like
Oh,
3
really?
miles wide. So the trains could climb from down by the Jericho Cafe up to this level to then head out to Underhill. It was like 3 miles wide. There's a picture I saw from 1940 or something, and you could see the outline of it.
That's
Well, you can see the bridge on Skunk Hollow.
Yeah.
Or the abutments for it anyway. And it would have had to climb up
Yeah,
and around to get out to just down over there. And if you go behind Pinehurst and Starbird, or no, it's, Starboard and Griswold, you can actually walk on the old railroad tracks. Well, the embankment, the tracks aren't there anymore, but
All right, let's bring it back to the.
so back to that,
that's, sorry,
getting something done with the JCDC that can issue bonds and use that if necessary for town of Jericho to hire out the contractors, put something there. Whatever, to the maximum density that we can do it.
so a couple of questions, and just to be 100% clear, I am here in no way representing the
Yep,
select
I
board
understand.
and asking questions that should not imply any conversations that have ever happened
Mhm.
about this at all, because they haven't. So you feel like, an idea that I had when I was thinking about affordable housing was the problem is that people want to make money. So they're trying to make money and they build a big house because they make quickly that you can make $500,000 on, blah, blah, blah. And that you need to my mind, you need to remove the profit piece of it and just get it down to like, I want to build a house so the house can exist. And basically you're giving someone a foot in without having family money. And so to my mind, it makes sense for the town to sort of have like a public-private partnership where they're working with the developer to build something where profit has been taken out because the town is the landowner or the sort of
The developer.
the force, right? The developer. Have you talked about that at all? And is that like, well, that's socialism, we can't do that? Like, have you talked about that? Have you heard blowback? Have you heard like people say that doesn't work because X, Y, and Z? I've heard people say the town shouldn't be in the developer business because they're a governmental entity, but I'm not sure if I agree with that. But have you guys talked about that idea? And do you have any thoughts on that? It sounds like that's what you're talking about, Eric.
I'm talking about not being a landlord, but yes, being a developer and getting our money back. Because that's, money came in, it was done. Somebody made profit off of it by selling it. And the town, seems to me, again, I'm not an expert on it, but if the town said, we're going to give you the funds to get started, and here are the conditions on which you can build and what the prices have to be. Town makes its money back and bonds get paid off and everybody's happy. And we get 10 or 15 new families coming into town.
So what I think what Eric's getting at is more about what gets built rather than the profit. You know, that it's not a large single family house, but that it's multi-family.
You're talking about railroad service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we talked to other groups or about other groups and two other groups that do similar things like. So Harvest Crossing, what is it called? Harvest
The
Crossing.
Wisdom House.
No, I was
Behind the
talking,
church.
yeah, I was talking about the one in Underhill that they built
Purpose
with
program.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the
With those.
Champlain or Green Mountain, yeah. So that's another model where I think JCDC could play a role in something like that, with other partnerships. And,
So,
I think,
so, just one thing, Peter, so you said take the profit part out. So basically, we wouldn't get the profit, we'd say, we'll give you X amount of money if you build it and sell it within what, some bogey for price range?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking about is that when, if you have a piece of land and you have pieces of land and you subdivide it because because this has been your retirement plan was to subdivide the land, put a house on it and sell it for a huge profit, that the market is so out of control right now that if it could be sold, if it could be built, essentially if it could be built and sold for the cost of building it.
So you'd have to have somebody that would take what their potential profit.
You would need to
was,
say.
as a tax write-off or something, or is it?
No, this is my vision. Speaking only for myself, not for the Affordable Housing Committee, not for the Planning Commission, just for me. Is that the builder makes the profit that the builder on the labor and their time, not on their investment on the property. The typical builder looks and says, I spent $200,000 on this acre lot.
Mhm.
I'm going to put up a house on it. So my net cost to build that house on that lot is going to be $700,000 just for gas and giggles.
Mhm.
I need to make another $200,000 profit in order for that to be worth my while. and we're taking out
The two
the
hundred.
200,000, you're gonna make a profit on the 500,000
Mhm.
that you put into it, but not the 200,000 getting the land built. So your profit goes significantly lower.
And then, so what is the enticement for someone to do that?
You can put more houses on that unit than you would otherwise.
Oh, okay, so you trade off with density, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that my experience has been that the JCDC it still isn't sure about what it is and what it wants to be. And so it's difficult for us. There's lots of different models and lots of different ideas about what they could do, what they could be. But I don't hear a real clear idea about who they are and what they want to do and what they want to be. It doesn't. And I think it's also difficult because they are chaired by a select board member who I think is that select board members are spread so incredibly thin. You know, now they're down to only 2 other members. And so I don't think that, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that they've gotten themselves to a place yet where we as a committee could go with any list of ideas.
Because they're not really functioning.
They're not functioning yet, I don't think. You know, one thing that we did do for Railroad Circle was to, you know, all of the resources that you were talking about that we collected, these housing meetings and whatnot. I gave them lots of contacts and information and encouragement to follow this, you know, to track this lead down or to talk to this person to get information. And I do think that there is there is a lot of potential for that group if it's something that the town wants to put energy and direction and initiative behind.
For what group
For the JCDC, if the town
decides to
utilize
make this
them
happen.
in the way that they can be utilized. At one of their last meetings, I recommended talking to, I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, but there's a similar group that's spread over 2 towns that started out as an economic development corporation and then has kind of a housing subgroup affiliated with it. Just to get a sense for the kinds of
Do you know what it
projects, I
what towns it is?
want to say it's Dover and I'll find it. But just to get a sense for what they're doing, how they operate, how they, you know, what kinds of private partnerships are they doing? Are they putting up money? Maybe talking to some housing trust folks with housing trust funds and talking about, you know, how are you utilizing that money? One thing that would be really great would be, you know, I was just talking to, on Tuesday, I was talking to the woman who was collecting votes for the water district here about how much it costs to hook up to their system. The cost of hookup is insane. Wouldn't it be nice if we could offer some kind of funding opportunity for folks to hook up to what little infrastructure does exist to take that cost down or to build an ADU or to do whatever. Like there's lots of things that group could be doing. But I don't think they're ready to do those things yet. And so I do think that talking to other groups that exist to find out what they're doing and how they manage themselves and how they work with their select board and then work with private and how they go about getting bonds and thinking about that would be really helpful for them.
I would love if you could find that person's name, not this second, but just at some point and show it to me.
Hello.
So this is maybe a question for the planning commission, but Chuck's stump speech is that 70% of the town you can build Patrick Gym, but you can't build a duplex. Where are things at with those zoning things, with that,
So,
with what Chuck wants?
Yeah, so, just to back up, the zoning bylaws have changed over the years and have gotten more. You know, it's easier now to build duplexes, for example, you can. That's probably was during your time on committee, that you can now build duplexes everywhere.
I think it was after. But anyway,
Right. And then the question is, where do we go from there, you know, from duplexes everywhere to multifamily houses?
but is it
everywhere?
duplexes everywhere now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and that was the change with the most recent bylaws from 22 or something. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then
Just are allowed in every district in the town.
they are now. And then the thing is the bylaw of the zoning regulations, the bylaws follow the town plan. And so we were, Chuck and others also were trying to influence the town planner or make sure that the town plan has housing as a priority and how it has housing as a priority. So if you read the town plan's housing section, a lot of the, you know, intentions in there derive, at least in part, from discussions with our committee. And they lay out priorities that we see that are necessary to create housing and to create housing that's affordable. And what does it even mean to be affordable, right? That are affordable to lower income, but also affordable to middle income, which right now is not the case in Jericho. So all those things are now laid out in the town plan, and I think that took us like basically last year to get there. And then the next question is, what actual changes in those zoning bylaws would be needed to realize those intentions? And we've made lists of that, and those lists have kind of varied a little bit over time. But they basically have several core sections. One of the core sections is around the village centers and village districts. And how to facilitate development in those areas, because that is the priority, the stated priority of town plan after town plan. It's the priority of regional planning commissions,
Right,
it's
the
the
whole
priority
state.
of the whole state is to do that. And what we keep running up against is that there's several impediments to that happening, that one of them being that, you know, there's already people living there that don't necessarily want to sell their land or develop their land any further, except when a personal need arises and they want to have their kids move back to Jericho, then they may subdivide or they may build new. So that's one hurdle, is that turnover is kind of slow in the towns. Another hurdle is if you want to build significant infill and you have people that are willing, you generally need better infrastructure than what's currently available. So infrastructure is something that we keep running up against again and again and again when we try to think this through. And that's been a kind of a frustrating thing to watch, to get for example, the wastewater study going on right now, to see that it keeps getting delayed. And Chuck, for one, having studied the record that the town has in realizing these things, says, well, it's not going to happen because it hasn't happened in the past. There's not a ton more, you know, oomph behind it now than there was. And, you know, he has a bunch of reasons for that. But the fact remains that there's a good possibility that it's going to be difficult to realize.
Because it's so expensive.
Because people aren't going to want to buy into it. People aren't going to want to pay for it. The town's going to lose interest in actually making it happen. There's not going to be any money devoted to the effort. There wasn't any money devoted to the effort, although it's in the town plan. I can recapitulate that entire speech. So, for example, in the current budget, there is no money set aside for water and sewer. And that goes through 25. And that's already like a good ways through the town plan that has laid out a timeline for realizing water and sewer. And if we're not even starting to set aside any money for it, what does that say about the commitment to it? So, and if you look at the past, there's been past efforts at making this come true and it hasn't really worked out. Because commitment falters.
And as a select board's response to the why you haven't put money into it yet, has the select board's response been, we're waiting for the wastewater report?
That's one response. That was an older response was, well, there is a plan. It says here that, you know, it's a planning commission level thing in the town plan. It says, once you have or actually was it on the select board level? Once you have the study finished, then you have like a certain number of months to come up with the next step in your plan. Not to start doing it, but to come up with the next step in your plan. But it's all very iterative.
There is a well-established timeline for
There is a timeline for it, but the
when this
timeline does
happens.
not actually end up with actually doing it. It's just study.
It gets to the point of know where you want to put it, decide if you're going to contract them. I think it stops at that. It doesn't stop with know where it goes, commit, get the property, do it.
It doesn't stop.
The do it isn't there.
It never stops. With doing.
And I think though that part of the push for, the reserve fund was not only because we have this wastewater feasibility study and the potential for a project, but infrastructure in general across the board is an issue. Water, wastewater, transportation, that, you know, we've got a bunch of failing septics that are, you know, leaking into and spreading into wells and, you know, listen to Jim Carroll and his, but there's lots of different infrastructure, not just this wastewater project that may or may not happen. And so we want to keep pressure on that too, but there are also ways that I think the town could, that will take money, right? That the town could help support infrastructure that already exists that's failing, or other ways of supporting infrastructure beyond just those ways.
Another example of that is the bike ped route that's being proposed that would go right along there from that Griswold up and over, and it's going to take money. The town didn't allocate anything for it. We spent how many thousands of dollars on a study? We spent how many thousands of dollars on a wastewater treatment study? And we didn't allocate anything for
I mean, I think that
doing something with it?
and I think that this is getting to a bigger, like,
And that gets to the town capacity issue, which is another issue that we kind of raised, and the planning commission raised, and the town plan raised, which is, you know, this output that we have here with 3 select people and 1 town administrator and a town clerk, is that really gonna work? Is that really adequate to do anything? And is this part of the reason why the town is somewhat stalled in housing, that we just don't have the capacity? So, yeah.
I think the other part is we are,
JCCC question
yeah,
too.
it is, but it also gets to another part of it, which is we, speaking as town government as a whole, are doing very little to convince the residents and taxpayers of this town that it's worth the money to do these things. And a lot of them, you know, we hear it over and over again. I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income, I can't have my taxes go up. Or I'm newly here, a new house owner, I've got 3 kids, I can't have my taxes go up. It's going to require taxes. And there is no one that I hear saying, you know what, taxes suck, but I really like a good road. I really like a good school. And I'm willing to pay taxes to get those. And there's nobody advocating for that. So the reason the past wastewater things failed was probably because people looked at it and said, my taxes are gonna go up $50 a month or $50 a year, and they weren't gonna pay for it. And there was nobody reaching out and saying, we have to do this. The select board needs to take the leadership on that. You know, I'm willing to back up anything that says we're gonna increase our taxes for the right purposes. But someone's got to take the lead on it, and I don't think Affordable Housing Committee is the ones to do that. Yeah. And Chuck talks a lot about these things. He doesn't bring up the tax resistance, but that's a big part of what we face all the time. School boards can get voted down because of it. And like good schools, great, got to pay for them. I'll leave aside my comments about the administrative overhead in the schools, but that's a different story.
But the thing was that in the eighties and nineties, you had a growing student population base with more parents moving in who were interested that the schools were well funded. Now, guilty as charged, I'm a retiree and a fixed income too. So, you have a lot of people now, of course, my wife was a teacher, so I'd be beaten if I didn't. But, the thing is that you just have the people there and, that are pushing for it like there used to be back when, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And that's part of the problem. But then I would say one thing is if you looked at where we want to build housing, if I don't want to move to an apartment, I'd like to stay in Jericho, I'd sell my house, but I don't want an apartment. But if there were condos or smaller houses, I'd be there in a minute and put my house up for sale. So it's a longer term thing, but I think if you want to change the dynamic to get more people interested in the school, you have to have a place for the people that are going to give up those homes to go in Jericho, unless we're all gonna go somewhere else.
You gotta unstick the market. The market is completely stuck.
Exactly.
I'm in a 2,200 square foot house with three, possibly 4 bedrooms. There's 2 people living in it.
Because they can't move somewhere else.
I can't move
If they
it.
want to stay within there.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and that was another, and then another thing is like, how much of this can you really create? Realistically, and what other options are there? And then the other things that we talked about was, making multifamily housing possible in the rest of Jericho. And it is possible in some zones, but not in others. I forget exactly where you can build them and where you can't, but it's restricted in most of Jericho.
About 70%, that's just.
Well,
Well,
he's
to me-
going by land mass.
Yeah, and of the Jericho, a big chunk of that 70% is the range.
Yeah, I think it's more like 6.
I think he's taking range out.
Yeah,
But
it
it doesn't,
takes that
it
out.
doesn't,
But the other thing too is much of Jericho is not developable. If you look at these mountains out here, that takes up a huge amount of space. So, I mean,
Look on
again,
Silly Hill, look up off of Orr Road, off of any of those, there's a lot of steep
So
terrain.
the point is, what can you do with the areas that are developable? And what can be done with them right now? Right now, if you're in a 3-acre zone, then anything new that you build there has to have 3 acres. So if you build a development with 10 houses on it, it has to have 30 acres. And for the 10-acre zone, it has to have 100 acres with some fudging for like density, this and that.
Yeah.
So that's never gonna make you have any affordable housing that way. That's not affordable. So what incentives can be provided to kind of incentivize multifamily housing or smaller houses that are affordable? Like, do you take them out of this requirement that every unit has to have a bridge of the zone, for example? What can Jericho do to facilitate that? So that was that's like thinking outside of the village centers.
I think you hit on a lot of what was in that, the recommendations that we put together, which were, land use regulations that support creation of compact and diverse housing, using kind of natural resource and wastewater mapping to help inform and identify areas that are appropriate for new housing, instead of kind of going by zones, going by the historic zones that we have. Like, let's sit down and actually take a look at what makes sense with the land that we have. That also, ensuring development regulations and review procedures are clear, predictable, sensible, timely. Investing in community infrastructure, municipal capacity, we touched on. I think we've talked a little bit about looking at the borders of our zone, not just kind of acreage and frontage and this kind of thing, but actually looking at potentially expanding our village and village center districts, looking at what is kind of in our triangle, and does it make sense to have 3 acre zoning in the middle of
Walkable.
our walkable, places that are walkable to village centers?
And
Um,
that specifically refers to Packard or in Brown's Trace as the triangle,
Right.
but it should also.
Oh, not down here, not
Oh, I'm
Lee River.
sorry, no, I
No.
mean, connecting the 3 village centers and looking at that.
Yeah,
That
So like
Lee
Brown's
River is-
Trace, Lee River,
Usually it's
Yeah,
Packard
15.
15
Packard 15,
and
Brown's.
Brown's Trace is the one most often looked, because Packard down to Lee River is pretty steep in most of it.
You could go
And now there's
that
gas
side
along
of
Packard.
15 a
Hmm?
little ways too.
I was saying, and there's water, now there's gas along Packard.
Yeah.
There's. And then, you
Packard's
know,
got the infrastructure.
and we've got that commercial development or commercial district.
At the bottom of Packard right over here.
So really thinking about the expanding the village center districts and thinking about what that village district is and could be. Another thing that we've talked about is also looking at particularly the spots that we transition zones between neighboring towns, and does our zoning kind of transition from but right up against I think Richmond's village center.
Mhm.
Is there an opportunity there? Would it make sense to have a different district there?
With 3 acres there, I think they're 1 acre or half acre.
Who we butt up against?
Richmond, Packard Road and Sunset
Brown's-
Drive,
Brown's
Brown's
Trace.
Trace.
Brown's Trace, sorry, yeah. Brown's Trace and Sunset Drive.
Sunset
You know where the
Road,
Peat Farm, you know where the
Sunset
Peat
Ridge.
Farm is?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like
just,
where you live.
just towards us from Peat Farm.
oh, that's where I live, but
Yeah. where you live.
that's very mountainous down there, and then you've got.
Well, and
But
there's,
right across the border in Richmond, they have
Yes.
smaller.
The
zones.
south view is right there.
But the land opens up there by the peat farm.
Yeah,
Where I am, across the street from it, there's a 400-foot ridge. And then it gets taller, there's a big.
But
plateau.
that's not something zoning has to address.
No, but I mean, just if
Which
you're
is the
talking
whole-
about smaller lot sizes.
Right, but that's
really-
not something you could make a smaller lot size, and then if you have a ridge there, you still can't build on it. That's the whole argument
Yeah.
about,
Okay,
you shouldn't restrict building by having huge zones, you should restrict it by what the natural resources.
okay. I was just thinking of Chuck's stump speech, and that's like a place where you couldn't build anything on that plateau, but.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay,
Problem
you're
is, if
talking
you
about in
change the
area.
problem that I see with this
Yeah.
whole idea, the more I've thought about it. is,
What whole idea is this?
adapting the adjacent zones, like, for example, reducing lot sizes, reducing lot sizes.
Yeah.
It would make more land available, but who would buy that land? What would happen with it? So if you take a 10-acre zone and you say, okay, we're gonna turn it into 1-acre zone here,
Mhm.
what's gonna happen? Does that generate affordable housing? It generates Spear Street, it generates like one big house sitting to the next, so that's not the answer to.
Because that's where you get money, that's where you get money.
Yeah, the developers are gonna say, thank you very much.
And nukes gonna come at home.
10, like $700,000 homes.
And that's not enough to make somebody whose family's grown and is living in a smaller house say, oh, great, I'm gonna go from 2,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. It's like, wrong direction.
And that's why I think I'm back to the idea of
So you need
this
something
public-private
else.
partnership where you take that, where you say, we're gonna change the zoning to take 10 acres, turn it to 1 acres, into single acres, and then the town gets involved in developing that into duplexes and triplexes and multi-family condos and affordable housing.
I think
Cause
that,
I feel like the private, no matter what you do, not no matter what you do, but largely, I mean, as you loosen regulations and kind of say like, do whatever you want, like capitalism will arrive and will make lots of money off of it, which is not gonna make necessarily affordable housing happen.
So there's two answers to that. One of them is to take it over, like you're saying, and the other one is to incentivize. To have like regulations that say, hey,
If we give you
Either-
10 houses, you need to make 3 of them.
you need to make 3 of them affordable. Or you say, if you build like 1,000 square foot house, then you won't have the same acreage limitation around it.
yeah, like let's allow for cottage courts in Jericho.
Yeah.
So that's like the first development that I bought my house in right over here by Skunk Hollow and Plains. And that development had little lots in the front, little houses that were like 800 square feet. Then little bigger houses in the middle. We went there. And then the slightly bigger houses, it was like 700, 1,000, 1,200. But the lots got bigger as house sizes got bigger. And it was built in the early 80s, and back then everyone was building for IBM, so you had technicians, engineers,
Right.
managers. And that kind of, no, yeah. And the thing is that would be, if you wanted to build a town relationship with a builder, you say, here's how we want you to do it. Instead of just saying, all right, now you can build on 1 acre and some guy builds a 3-story mansion. But, you know, try to, and this place, it's, I guess it's called, I say the name? Yeah, Cedarland. So, and, you know, you could just drive by there and take a peek at that. It's, down here. And, you know, and that's how developments were built in the 80s, because IBM was the big customer and people coming to work at IBM. That all changed in the early 90s when IBM said, you no longer have a guaranteed job. And then we said, oh, by the way, we can lay you off if we want you. So everything changed. That's how it was done in the 70s and the 80s.
So it's 8:48. I'll give 2 more minutes. To Peter, if anyone has any questions.
I'm good.
For
This
Peter.
is way more than I wanted. I mean, way more than I expected. This is great. This is super helpful.
Does anybody have any questions for Peter or anything that you'd like to leave here with?
Just do something.
It
It seems that it's very, very hard to do something in the select.
That is.
Like you buy that railroad property and before you know it, there's like 50 people going at you because you spent $300,000.
And I don't care about that. I don't mind that, but
And you can never talk to the other select board members except if you're in the room and in the public meetings.
she's really frustrated. So I'm not, yeah. Very, very frustrated.
So you have to be really well prepared and whoever is.
And you've
that
only
way-
got 2 hours, so how do you have a call? Like,
Yes.
we just wasted 40 minutes talking about this stuff. And, but none of you can do anything about it, but how does the select board take 40 minutes to wrestle with ideas that create innovation and moving forward when you're like, oh, I gotta check off and I've gotta sign this thing, we need the next person to come and complain about whatever, we gotta talk to the library trust, like their grant, like.
One thing I want to say is, and I don't know whether this is correct, but my feeling is that we don't hesitate so much to invest money into studies and consultants. And I think that what Jericho needs is a more permanent upstaffing than consultants. It needs to hire people. You know, you need to reform the structure of town government so that instead of a town administrator, you have more people. You have like some towns have a town manager and that's, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but just the capacity needs to be inherent in here rather than hired out for
Bringing
studies.
in-
Because those studies, I'm not sure how much really ever happens.
How much of what comes out of them beyond that?
We do have one advantage that the recent studies, I mean, David is a resident of Jericho. So he benefits from it, which is
And we can all-
he's gonna have to live with the results
Right.
too.
Wait by his car in the Jericho market when he comes out, be like, so. No one else is doing that, just me?
But it would be nice to. The select board is limited, as you know, 2 of you get together, you're a quorum, and that's that.
2 of you email.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm
But
gonna-
without changing that, the select board has to take movement on the wastewater. Jericho cannot develop it further without wastewater. It's not a debatable question. We can't. We need it. It's gotta come in here. And select board, you guys are elected. Sorry, it's a tough job. But you put yourself up there with a target on your back, do it for something worthwhile. Wastewater treatment is worthwhile.
But one question, if you do fund a study, can you put something that requires that by this date, we will make a decision, by this date, we will do this? Because right now, there's kind of this nebulous target that says, well, when it gets this much done, we'll make a decision, but, you know, that's sticking out, is,
I have no, not I can't answer, I have no idea, I mean. I do as like a citizen, like go back a week when I was a citizen, like I have the same sense, like. I live in Riverside, I live on corner of right by Dickinson and the market and all that, and they're like, oh, we're gonna do a study, I'm like. I have folders full of, I can give you all the studies, like, this is the Dickinson study, this is the triangle, this is David's triangle, this is the charrette we did, like. So I have the same sense of like, why are we doing the studies we did 30 years ago? Well, it changed, okay, well then. Just.
say,
I was driving along a road the other day. And it was a road that I knew was relatively new because I'd driven along there about 5 years ago and I wasn't there. And I see a survey crew out there surveying the road. I'm like, this thing's not 5 years old. It's not like the tectonic plates have shifted. What are you measuring?
Peter,
Okay.
I sent you, the information on the Bytown community development thing, and then
Is it Dover?
I don't
Dover and
remember, I just
Wilmington are what you-
forwarded you the same email I sent to Eric.
Oh, okay.
And that has all the information.
SJ, I looked at your notes at Dover and Wilmington.
Dover to Wilmington?
It was in my notes.
It was in the JTDC minutes.
Great, thanks. It's so validating to know that something in here is, and then I also sent you the recommendation that we spent this last year putting together that Frederica was talking about. That we will be building off of this year, but that recommendation outlines a lot of the stuff that we just hashed out for you.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you very, very much. I'm gonna go home and have dinner.
thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, my friends, I'm gonna just blame all of you for the meetings where we go over. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to keep us on schedule.
Hey, it's
What do we have to do? What do we
5
have
to
left to
9.
5 and 9, what else is left to do?
Dude, we got liaison updates, we got other business, we got April agenda, which always ends up getting tabled, and I just make up a week.
So
before.
liaison us, nothing to report from planning commission.
I've got
Great.
something real interesting, but I don't quite understand it yet, and I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or 1 minute?
Let's start with 1 minute and then see what happens.
Okay. So there was only one meeting between our last meeting, it was February 14th. And they were talking about a project out on Morgan Road, 20 Morgan Road. It's been kind of stalled out. Permits have been pulled, permits have been, let expire. There was some kind of court case associated with it. Because the developers had different ideas than the DRB and it was settled in court. This all goes back to 2017. And now the developers are back and they're saying, hey, we wanna start this up again. We wanna change something. Flynn told them, after working with them for a while, Flynn told them, no, you can't just amend something, you have to submit a new application. And they're arguing that, no, they don't want to submit a new application, they already have the permits pulled. They just want to amend one thing from this agreement that was actually the settlement agreement after the court case. They want to amend one of those things and then move forward. And that one thing seems to have something to do with perpetually affordable units.
So those units are, last time I walked down there, 3 of them are up and have siding on, have appliances in.
Yeah.
There's a 4th one that I'm walking through there, they have enough material for a 4th unit. They're all duplexes, it's Jim Carroll's stuff, it's
Yes.
there. And I think the request was to, on his side, was to, I may be misquoting, he'll listen to this and come back and yell at us if I'm wrong. But I believe he wanted some of them to be permanently affordable. And that was not in the initial application.
Okay, so I read it the other way around.
No, I think he was pushing to have them permanently affordable.
And that's just as far as I got, so, yeah, so there was initially something in there that said perpetually affordable, and there was now an attempt to change that. Whether the attempt was to change it back to that or away from that is, I guess, the question.
Yeah,
But that's where,
And my understanding is that the ability to amend a settlement agreement is
That's what's under dispute.
correct.
Yes, exactly.
It's not just like any other,
And they can work that out, but what I thought was interesting to us was this,
yes,
that the core of this issue is apparently something to do with actually for,
So
and that.
That might explain, it does look like
clarified which
construction has
direction.
stopped there too.
the what?
The construction has stopped in the last two times I went by there, and it's been 3-4 weeks now. There've been almost no changes, but if that's the debate,
well, I mean, this is maybe not that, never mind.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a different,
I do believe
a
those will
different
be.
concern about like
Yeah.
hooking up. So that with the select board, that was a thing.
Yeah, there's also new hookups, there's new water, there's other conditions that have changed, but they've gotten better. And they're, you know, they were quoting a Highlands test, which is a very interesting. But now I'm on my formulated version. Anyway, what most of the meeting was about was whether it would be legal to amend this or whether they really needed a new application. And they were saying, well, we're gonna submit a new application that says it's an amendment. They were trying to get by with that. And it's just but anyway, at the core of it was something to do with a perpetually affordable unit. So
Mhm.
that's good to know.
There is water on Morgan Road already.
Yes, yeah, and now they can, you know, from the range apparently, is what they
Yes.
said.
No, there's been water there for 20 years at least. Most of the
Yes.
hydrants are totally rusted out.
Originally had something to do with it.
Probably, yeah.
So was it a septic question that he was trying to go for more density and they're saying the hookup isn't?
I don't know whether it has something to do with that because infrastructure did come into the discussion.
Something.
So you know, it's just more tantalizing. There's something going on and I don't really know. What
Yeah.
it is. Sorry.
No. Any other, sorry, we didn't need for that yet. I'd be like, yeah, okay. I meant for it to be like, yes, an agreement. No, I don't, it's not. Sorry, guys, it's not my intent at all. Any other liaison updates?
Conservation Commission?
Yeah,
The guy that made the software for the overlays of different areas, and that's now functional, and you could go in and look, and you could have maps of all these different areas of wetland, forest, runoff pools,
cool.
and they were ranked on how important they were, and the ranking was based on things like, okay, is the forest in this area something that's really interesting and different? That was one of the items. And then what he did was he looked at all the roads and they wanted connectivity between these different blocks. And so, and it was not like huge stuff. It was like, oh, here's this area on Shillhammer Road, let's say. And if this 100 feet doesn't get developed, you have a path for animals to get from this area over more towards in the Barber Farm Road and get over to the next area. So if you think of it, it was like these blobs, and there were the roads, and then there were just these little patches here and there that were for the animal, you know, the wildlife process and stuff. So yeah, it was very interesting, and I didn't write the website down, but if you want to Conservation Commission, you can, and you can log in and just look at all this stuff for the home.
That's very cool. I'm sure I have updates, but I don't remember what any of them are. I will say though, if anyone is interested in learning about form-based code in like a not necessarily Jericho's form-based code, but form-based code in general, the presentation that David White gave to the Planning Commission was really informative. And so I recommend going back and watching it if you're interested in like form-based code 101. If you could care less, then don't waste your time because it wasn't necessarily specific to Jericho. But my takeaway from it was, were you there for that meeting, Eric?
Mhm.
My takeaway from it was, what do you, tell me if you agree. I thought it was really interesting that the presentation started with the housing resolution. And absolutely nothing about the presentation was about increasing housing or allowing for infill or anything that would really move forward. It was all, and again, like this was form-based code 101, so, but it was all about the experience of people on the street and trying to, you know, create an experience. And so we got into a lot of the aesthetics and the reasons why there are regulations about like how big windows are and how they're spaced, because it'll, you know, invite people into storefronts and things like that. So it was,
Want me to channel Chuck?
I was sitting there like all of a sudden the Chuck in me was like, what? But it was informative, and at the end of it, I thought that the discussion that the planning commission had was a really great conversation. And one of the things that sounded to me like came out of that was that they were thinking about putting together a kind of rubric against which suggestions or changes to the form-based code could be assessed, to be able to see if, you know, this change is worth doing or not. And if that's the case, I would really push for one of the columns on that rubric to be, does it make housing? Does it improve the, I don't know, does it facilitate housing development? Does it facilitate infill? Does it facilitate these things that we need to reach our housing goals? The other thing it brought up for me too was, why do we need 2 character-based zones? One of those zones where we're developing and there's a lot of, you know, there will be mixed use, so storefronts and different kinds of housing, and, you know, that isn't there yet. And then we really want a developer to come in and say like, I want to put in 50 units. And so I want it to be really clear what the code is so that I can, you know exactly what's required of me and I can do it and I don't have to worry about fights with the DOB, whatever. Why would we need that for the rest of, for the other zone, where what we're promoting is infill and ADUs, and these aren't going to be developers coming in saying, I want to really easily develop 20 units and know how to do it. It's going to be individual landowners trying to make changes or subdivide. And so why would we need character-based zoning for that and form-based?
Isn't there a requirement because these are historic districts?
You know, the village centers, I don't think it's anything.
Anyway,
So to answer part of that,
yeah,
the form-based code itself is sort of this idea that David brought up over once, it's form versus function. And the form you provide will support the function you want. So if you say you've got to have this much road frontage, this much setback and those things, it sort of dictates what kind of building you're going to have. So if your road frontage is 30 feet and your setback is 5 feet, it means there's a sidewalk in front of your house, and that's going to be different than your road frontage is going to be 100 feet and your setback's 20 feet. That's all for the new stuff, which is the old mill property and in through there. The neighboring property,
can't remember if it's 3 or 4. One of them is 3.
one of them is 3, yeah.
Never remember.
I think the neighboring is 4. And the zone base is 3, but it's one or the other. That's not going to develop easily. So the idea of the form-based code there is if we have, and this is going to go back to the old form, because the old form is like, here's this Disney-fied New England farm town.
Right.
And that's designed to mimic the existing land and land use and development in that part of Underhill, Jericho, where you have smaller houses with porches and has a nice sort of nice Vermont country feel to it. So when you develop the new area as a sort of modern Vermont country feel center, you don't want the adjacent property to suddenly look like
Out of place.
out of place because somebody just put up something like what's at Severance Corners. So that form-based code would be to ensure that you have a cohesive look throughout that entire area. With variations, obviously, you don't want everything to be cookie cutter, but you also don't want a 5-story building in an area where everybody else around you is
But
two or
that
less.
stuff is already developed. I mean,
Well-
those neighborhoods are already.
Yeah.
So the infill that you would get there, or if a person sells, buys, and they want to tear it down and. put some-
Yeah, that would be a time, but if someone were to buy and sell. But yes, the parts that we see as we drive on Route 15 or on Park Street look pretty developed, but if you take an aerial view, their backyards are pretty big and they're pretty open.
Mhm.
So that's where the additional development would go.
And does the form-based code allow for that? And B, is it necessary?
Form-based code would allow for that kind of infill.
Okay.
So the necessity of it is to make sure that you don't have somebody building a pillbox or something like that in that area.
But that's.
And again, part of the reason for.
And who says that? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, part of
Again-
the rationale for all of it is, if you build according to the form-based code. Your permitting is much easier. Yep, it fits this, no
yeah, but it
development.
sounds like, because that's the argument I've heard before, it's just gonna make it more straightforward to go get permitted. We don't need to drag anything through the TRB necessarily.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's not what he led with. What he led with is we wanna create like a village that's optically cohesive, has a certain character to it, and is somewhat uniform in what it looks like. And, you know, that's a completely different idea, that is more than I want this to be straightforward to actually get built. You know?
They go hand in hand. If you fit the form, it's easy for you to build. If you wanna vary,
Yeah, but it dictates like a kind of it
Yes.
dictates an aesthetic.
But
yes,
the problem is that the landowners, adjacent landowners can slow you down in lawsuits if you want to build a pillbox. So if you semi-conform to what's already there, you're getting.
And now we're
your
making-
permitting.
So
Okay.
Making you
now
conform.
we're making.
But also, I
but
mean,
if you want that pillbox.
Yeah.
There's a property just another quarter mile away that you can do it on, that's not in the code.
Yeah.
I think this is a much larger discussion that we're gonna be having over the next few months.
Yeah.
But if you're interested, that presentation from David, I found to be very.
It's online, yeah.
All right, let's skip, it's now 19. So, I don't have any, I didn't have any new conversations tabling. I do think that the posters definitely brought people in. I definitely saw people coming in. I had it wasn't laminated, but like in a plastic sleeve, a copy of the housing resolution, with the poster of the goals. And I saw numerous people come up, look at the poster, and then actually pick up the resolution that's in it. And quite a few people stopped by and look at the HOA stuff. I told you all of the ADU brochures got taken. And the few conversations I had are very similar to ones that we've had before. And, you know, a lot of people asking, I had actually 2 different people commenting on, are you?
No, there's something in this carpet and it's like by about 9 o'clock.
Are you saying we need to adjourn?
No, I just said that when I come in, I can smell there's something in this carpet.
Mm.
And I fall apart, so I can
sorry.
leave and watch the ending.
No, you need to stay to make the motion to adjourn, because there won't be a.
Well, you
quorum.
can.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Sorry, that's Frederica's only role on the committee is to
Oh,
second.
sorry.
Sorry, Eric.
Cheers for.
Does that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, get on out of here.